Hello everyone, it's Vicki Lawrence. Who you say? Vicki Lawrence. From the Carol Burnett Show? From Mama's Family? Close personal friend of Mr. Burgher's? Anyway, I'm here to welcome you to Art 101 with Mr. Burgher.
Art 101 with Mr. Burgher.
Thank you, Miss Lawrence, for that kind introduction. Welcome back, scholars. This is Art 101 with me, Mr. Burgher.
All right, Buster, what do you do?
Well, I'm a professional artist and a master educator attempting to bring you the best in art historical content. I love you to interact with the video, but let's dive right into the video today. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about one of the great love affairs in art history, Camille Claudel and Auguste Rodin. Now, Rodin didn't get married, literally, until the end of his life. And during that time, his longtime girlfriend was a lady by the name of Rose, and he was very, let's say, less than completely loyal to her. And one of the individuals that he was less than loyal with was a fellow artist by the name of Camille Claudel. Many of us, some of us, may be familiar with the legendary story of the two, but today I want to break down that love affair, that Parisian love story, dysfunctional love story, I guess. Here you go.
There's a lot to be said about the relationship between the artists Camille Claudel and Auguste Rodin. Movies have been made about this, and it is legendary in the art world. She the muse, him the master, but is that really all there is to the story? Of course not. It goes a lot deeper than that, but let us dive into that story just a little bit deeper today. First off, her family did very well for itself. Her dad did some stuff with real estate and things like that, and her mother came from a long line of fairly wealthy farmers. Her family would travel around from place to place. When she was at the age of 12, the family would end up at Nogent-sur-Seine, where she had already picked up working with clay. Her early work grabbed the attention of working artist and sculptor Alfred Beuret, who encouraged her and encouraged her father to allow her to continue her work. He really saw something special in her work. In response to this, in 1882, along with her mother and a couple siblings, moved to the Montparnasse neighborhood in Paris, while her father continued to work all over the place, really. Now, during this time, there weren't a lot of opportunities for females to get artistic training anywhere. For Camille at the time, her family found a place for her to study at the Académie Colarossi, where women were admitted, permitted to draw male nudes, and really find a place where they could develop their skill. This training would give her a huge amount of confidence. And in 1882, she would rent her own studio space, which she would share with three individuals: Jessie Lipscomb, Amy Singer, and Emily Fawcett. While in Paris, Claudel definitely became mentored by Beuret, and she very much depended on him for guidance. Eventually, his career would take him to Italy, leaving her without her mentor. But upon his departure, he would ask Auguste Rodin to look over his pupils, obviously including Claudel. At this particular time, Rodin was 43 years old and had a pretty strong reputation as an exceptional artist and sculptor. When Claudel first started working under Rodin, she was a very pretty 18-year-old girl who was somewhat captivated by this well-known and respected artist. And she was not only one of his best pupils, but also became his muse, lover, as well as helping with his work in his own personal studio.
You sick freak!
Now, her family was not real happy about this whole situation, and Her father would financially continue to support her at this time, but everybody else basically disowned her. And so really the only person she had to rely on the day-to-day was Rodin. She would assist with many of his projects, including The Burghers of Calais, The Kiss, and The Gates of Hell. He would publicly sing her praises. He recognized her skill, her originality, and very much saw her as a creative genius, and even went so far as to say that she was the best assistant at his studio.
I told you I was hot tonight.
Now, even though Rodin had many women on the side, so to speak, I guess you would say he was in a relationship with a woman by the name of Rose Beuret. And even though he had women on the side, he was, I guess, somewhat faithful to her in that he would not end his relationship with her to be exclusively with anyone else. And this was a source of aggravation for her, definitely. She got so angered by this double life that she was enraged by the whole thing. She was so jealous that it would later develop into a extreme paranoia type situation. But in the meantime, a lot of this sort of relationship stuff was still going on, and she continued to work in the studio with him. While working with Rodin, her skills were definitely advancing quickly, and she would greatly influence him because, again, she was a creative genius. And in 1886, one of her sculptures would even win a prize at the Salon. Her use of subject matter as well as a strong psychological message gained her and her work a lot of positive attention. Even though professionally she was at the top of where no other woman could be or had been, she was in agony because her relationship with Rodin was in shambles. He refused to sever ties with Rose, and certainly wasn't going to let her know about the side hustle that he had going on in the studio. By 1892, after 10 years, the two would go their own separate ways, and Camille Claudel's professional life would also fall apart. Some believe that one of the motives behind the relationship falling apart was that in 1892, Camille becomes impregnated by Rodin. Now, clearly this would really out their situation together, so he would have her get an abortion, which she did, and the relationship would end soon after.
Adulterer, fornicator.
Her work becomes sorrowful, a depression. And because she was no longer supported by Rodin's team of artists and financial backers, she slowly dissolved off the artistic map. Now, to be fair, Rodin did attempt to financially help her, to support her career, but Claudel was so bittered by the whole thing and just broken by it that she really refused all the help that he would offer. Her opinion was that Rodin had sabotaged her career. She also thought that he was going to have her killed.
You should be ashamed of yourself!
Her opinion was that he took all of the energy and her genius and used it for himself and completely left her in the gutter and ruined. She would continue to make very original works, and she would have some glimpses of success, but never really get over the way she had previously. And sadly, she blamed that completely on Rodin. During this time, she was working and living alone inside of her own studio. And again, despite some positive things, she had a lot of financial difficulties. There were years that Rodin would pay for her rent, and from 1905 onward, she would have a huge decline in her mental health situation. She would have these bouts of rage and destroy all of her work in the studio. She ruined relationships with potential commissioners and patrons, and she went deeper and deeper into a hole of paranoia and isolation. And even though she did have some friends that had her back, she felt like she just had this dark cloud over her head and the world was against her. Now, there is an example of Rodin being less than supportive with Claudel's work. In 1899, she created a work called The Age of Maturity, which is largely regarded as this autobiographical work that depicts an older man, guess who, being led by an older woman and lying on the ground beneath them with outstretched arms is a young woman, Camille Claudel herself, left on the ground all alone. When this work first went on display, Rodin was furious as it overtly exposed their affair, and so he did everything that he could to have it taken down, tried to get the commission for the work canceled, as he felt like this was a betrayal of their secret situation, I guess. Her paranoia would manifest itself in her creating these booby traps behind her doors and only speaking to people behind a closed door. This set up a lot of red flags, and people were kind of put off by her. In 1912, she destroyed all of her work in the studio, and the following year her dad would die. But sort of in a twist, she didn't know because nobody told her that her dad died. She just felt like she was cut off by him. And her mother and siblings then took the opportunity to have her diagnosed with paranoia and committed into an insane asylum. With her being institutionalized, the family had her entire studio, workspace, workshop destroyed. Now the doctors were saying, listen, this girl's not insane, she's just sad, and she's got some issues, but she's not crazy. She doesn't belong here. But the family wanted her put away, they wanted her gone, so they just left her there. She still had some outspoken fans trying to persuade her family. Even Rodin tried to persuade her family, but all of this was without success. She would spend 30 years in an asylum. After years of being locked away, she finally just kind of gave up and completely abandoned creating sculptures. One of the irrational thoughts that made her stop making art was her belief that Rodin was going to steal her ideas. And so she stopped making work largely to try to get back at Rodin. Today, only 90 works of hers still exist today because much of it, as mentioned, she had destroyed herself. Sadly, she would die alone in 1943 at the age of 78. She would be buried in a mass grave at the asylum, as her body was never claimed by her family.
I just don't think it's right.
Now, Auguste had known Rose since 1864 when they were just kids, and many people don't know that they had a son together that they basically pawned off on other family members because neither one of them had a parental bone in their bodies, but I digress. He finally decided to commit to Rose and get married at the age of 76, only 2 weeks before her death, and 1 year before his.
I tell you what, friends, that's one heck of a ride, one heck of a story. Thanks for letting me share it with you. You have a good day out there.
What kind of a chance has our boy got in this place, huh?
Board of Education's gonna hear about this.
Why the hell did you drag me?
Well, who the hell?
Who the hell